Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Welcome and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Gary Gray, Director of Athletics at Stroudsburg University, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's webinar entitled Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in College Athletics, a Call to Action. Tonight's program is the first in a 12-part series that ESU Athletics will host between now and February 2022, with one speaker per month addressing the same topic, each in their own unique and personal way. East Stroudsburg University is a diverse university where diversity, equity, and inclusion are highly valued. However, we all recognize much more can be done, not only locally, but also within our state, within our country, and even globally to improve our society in so many ways. We know we can do better, quite frankly. To cause change, action must occur. To cause action, discussions must occur. Ideas must be shared, and commitments to change behavior must be made. It is with this idea that we have created this speaker series. During tonight's presentation, you are invited to send in questions or make comments by way of the chat function at the bottom of your screen. Those will go to Mr. Noah Strone, Coordinator of Athletic Operations at ESU. When our speaker has concluded his remarks, Noah will serve as our moderator by sharing those questions and thoughts you send in to our speaker tonight for his comment or response. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Nancy Joe Greenwald, Professor, Associate Director of Athletics for Student Athlete Success, and Senior Woman Administrator at ESU to introduce tonight's speaker. Dr. Greenwald.
Thank you, Dr. Gray. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us as we begin this series of discussions on diversity, equity, and inclusion in college athletics. I'm actually extremely honored as well as excited to introduce our first speaker in the series, Coach Muhamadou Kaba. And the reason is because I've had the unique experience and opportunity of knowing this individual when he was a student athlete at ESU and a member of our Student Athlete Advisory Committee, and now I have the privilege of working with him as a colleague. Coach Kaba entered ESU as a student and athlete in 2011. He began his coaching career, as many of you know, in 2016. In his short tenure, though, it's important to note that as an assistant coach, he has become one of the most prominent young coaches in NCAA Division II basketball. In 2018, he was recognized by the National Association of Basketball Coaches as one of 30 coaches under the age of 30 who were identified as up-and-coming coaches in the profession. It's also important to note that only 6 Division II coaches were on that watch list. In 2020, just this past year, Silverware's Media and the Minority Coaches Association both identified him as one of the top NCAA Division II assistant coaches in the country. So there's no doubt that Coach Kaba has quickly become recognized as an influencer in the world of college basketball. But as importantly, it's important to note that on a daily basis, Kaba touches the lives of his players and those with whom he works because of who he is as a person, not solely because of who he is as a coach. His authenticity is a result of his lived experience, and it's that story that he will share with us tonight. Coach Kaba.
Thank you, Dr. Greenwald, for the kind words. I appreciate Dr. Gray and the entire committee for, selecting me to be the first speaker. So I'm honored to be here and excited to get started. So I have a PowerPoint presentation, taking it back to my high school and college days. So all the educators don't judge my presentation. Hopefully it's a par, to be honest. I haven't done this in a while. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience, my life, even some of my friends who are tuning in probably won't know some of the things that I'm going to share today. So, hopefully people can take a lot away from my presentation. So I'll talk about where it all started. So my family, my parents specifically, born and raised in the Gambia. It's a small country in Western Africa. It's the homeland for me. So, I wasn't born there, but I consider that as my homeland. The population is about 2.4 million people. And as you can see, just in terms of like where it's located, it's right in the middle of Senegal. It's really small. You can look at the strip there. So it's really split up into two. So you have city life and you have the villages. So the people who live closer to the coast, if you can see my cursor here, they live in the city, right? So the city has, a lot more resources, a lot more opportunities for work. And, people that live there have, a better way of life. And then the people who live further into the country, that's where the villages are. And that's where my family is from. My father, my mom, they both come from those villages. And, when you add up, everything in the country in terms of what the poverty level is, 50% of the population is living in poverty. And I think that number could be, a little off depending on how people define poverty. But my family just wanted more, right? My mom and dad wanted more. They wanted, to provide themselves a better way of life and also their future kids a better way of life. And that's what, led them to where we are today. So, and them seeking opportunity, the opportunity for a better life, had led them to East Orange, New Jersey, which is, where I was born and raised. This is a picture of my high school. Just, you'll see pictures of different things that kind of relate to the topics that I'm talking about. So they came to East Orange, New Jersey. My dad's first job in East Orange, he came in 1987. He worked at a car wash, right? So where he saved up his money to, again, have a better way of life here in America, pay for a plane ticket for my mom to come to America, and they created their family from there. And, when you talk about, creating a better life for others, they were able to, be able to work and then provide us a better way of life than they lived in Africa. And then also sending money back home where they moved their families from the villages to that city. And again, the city life is a little similar to America in a way where you have more resources, have more, opportunities to work and some of those kind of things. So again, saving up their money and moving their family from those villages to the city, was something that, that was important to them when they came to this country. And, I would say it was mission accomplished, right? I think we grew up a lot better than they did. I visited the country for the first time in 2018. And just to see the way people live there and what I had growing up, I'm so appreciative of my family and their sacrifice to come to a different country, not knowing anyone. And, not knowing how things are going to turn out. They worked hard to give us that opportunity, me and all of my siblings, to be able to have a better life. And then for us, it was wanting even more. And our parents pushed us to want more, right? We live in the city. And again, I'm grateful for all the things we have, but, we wanted different things, right? We wanted a big house with a yard and, a car that you can drive and all of those things. And growing up, I lived in a 90-unit apartment building, right? So there's not a lot of space, but you want more, right? And our parents pushed us to do that. And that's what led us to going to college, right? And going into my college experience, I couldn't have asked for more. My athletic experience was great. Coach Wilson and Coach Potts were great to me, gave me a chance to come to ESU. And, we had great athletic success, being a part of 2 conference championship teams, going into the NCAA tournament, traveling to different parts of the country that I've never experienced before. That was all part of my athletic experience. And, I can never take that for granted. And I'm appreciative of those coaches giving me that opportunity. I was a math education major. My goal was always to teach. I always wanted to give back and help people through the game of basketball. At the time I didn't know that being a college coach was a full-time job and a profession that I could pursue. So I wanted to teach and then also coach as well. So, I always had passion in math. So was a math education major, was able to get my degree in that. And then I was always supported in that department, right? I was always able to go to my professors and they were always able to help me, when it was, a little tough for me. But, and then also social life on campus, just from my first time being in the dorms, I developed great relationships that I still have to this day. And again, that also, all ties into my college experience, which is something that, I definitely treasure my time at ESU. And then, when you graduate, now you move on to the real world, right? And I'll kind of go into, now some of the things that we're talking about with diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I'm proud to be a part of 3 unique minority groups. I say that with pride because, I know I'm different in that way, but I've been able to be successful. And I hope I can inspire those who, have doubts and, are also part of minority groups. So just to go in the beginning is I'm a son of immigrant parents, right? My parents are immigrants. I told you about that story. And, we always felt like outsiders. Our parents told us from the beginning that people wouldn't like us. We were made fun of. Sometimes we wouldn't be a part of certain friend groups because they just looked at us as being different, me and the rest of my brothers and sisters. And then you talk about the media portrayal, right? And you'll see media portrayal as a common thread throughout, the entire presentation. And what people see from the media is what they remember and what they associate you with. And immigrants do not have, a great reputation in this country, and it's basically based on the media and the people that they do show. And it was tough growing up, but we got through that, and I was able to move on from that. Another minority group that I'm associated with and that I'm a part of is the Islamic community. I am a Muslim man. So just kind of going through the bullet points, 9/11, 9/11 happens and you have a terrorist attack, and it makes life hard even as a kid. Even my sister, who was in elementary school at the time, and someone telling her that our family was responsible for the 9/11 attacks, right? So she gets into a physical altercation in school, and our family was there to support us. It was just us, but we didn't feel like we had other support, right? So we always stayed together amongst ourselves. And again, you talk about the media portrayal, right? And when people see Islam or people see Muslims, they associate that with terrorism. So, I had to fight a lot of, stereotypes. I had to go back and forth with people who I thought were friends about, what the religion was about, which is peace and tranquility. And anyone who knows Muslims will know that. And then I know it's pure ignorance, to be honest with you, because again, just being associating all Muslims with what you see in the media, isn't fair to us. And, I know for me, I try to represent myself in a way where people look at me and say, this is what most Muslims are, and not the people that they portray in the media. And last, is I'm part of the Black community, right? And the first two bullet points of why I named immigrants and Muslims was I grew up in a Black community, so I stood out for being an immigrant and also being a Muslim. But now as I go into adulthood and college, now I'm looked at it more as Black, right? So now, I have other challenges, right? You got to beat stereotypes, the double standard. You have to work harder than everyone else because you have to beat those things that people, assume of you because you're a Black man. And again, I go back to media portrayal, right? And immigrants is media portrayal, and Muslims is media portrayal. And then also as a Black man, there's media portrayal, right? You see people talk about crime and they just see all the bad things, right? So now you're just looped into whatever, people see on TV or in the media. And, again, for me, being a part of all three minority groups, I feel as though I have a responsibility, to represent our communities, right? So when people see me, they can give everyone else behind me a better chance, right? So they're not, feeling like an outsider, or, people are just going to be prejudiced against them based on those minority groups. And that's kind of led me to becoming numb to discrimination. I've talked about being discriminated from, as early as elementary school, and feeling as an outsider, as an immigrant, as a Muslim, and as a Black man. So when you're so used to it, you become numb to it, right? You just learn how to live with it, basically. And how I've done that was avoiding certain environments, right? If there's an environment that I know I have to go into that I may be discriminated, where I don't think it's inclusive, I avoid those environments completely. And that was my way of kind of dealing with it. And then expecting to be discriminated against. And if I'm forced to be in those certain environments, right, whether it's going to college and, maybe going into school and knowing that someone's going to discriminate against me because I'm an immigrant, I'm just expecting that. So as I expect it, it's just something that I don't really let bother me, and I just move on from it. And then, to be honest, I get into a situation and I'm not discriminated against. I'm surprised and I'm excited. I'm happy, right? Because I'm expecting the worst. And then if the best happens, then that's great. And then just learning to walk away, right? So again, expecting to be discriminated against, you just learn how to walk away. You learn how to take those wounds, and you grow from it, and you just try to become a better person, right? You just, be the bigger person, walk away, and just shake your head at the ignorance of other people that is directed at you. And kind of going on from there, I'll be honest, I think my life as an athlete, and, just from an AAU coach, Doug Kraft, he talks about the power of the ball. And being an athlete had so many privileges for me. And I think I wasn't subject to as much discrimination as some of my other, Muslims, immigrants, or Black people, because I am an athlete, right? So we'll talk about the privilege of being an athlete. So first thing is you get social acceptance from your peers, right? So they see you as someone who's cool, someone who stands out, you're, athletic, you're playing in front of people. So you just become more socially accepted. And that's what I noticed as I was getting older. People did start to accept me more. I started to, grow my friend group because I felt more comfortable. They felt more comfortable with me, especially the teammates that I had. Along those lines is also the resources that I was given as an athlete, right? In high school, I had guidance counselors, I had coaches. So I had extra resources that maybe, the normal student body didn't have. And that also helped me along the way, whether it was making a decision for college or, how to find out how to, apply for a student loan and all of those things. But being an athlete had such an impact on how people view me, especially as I got older in life. And then my college experience compared to others. My experience at ESU was great. I wasn't subject to racism as an undergrad or a graduate student, but I know my experience was different than others, right? Why? Because I know I was an athlete. So people, would associate me as being an athlete, right? I have my Warriors basketball shirt on. So they see you as an athlete, you're treated a little bit differently. I'll be honest, you are. And then I also had those extra resources, right? I had a coach where I can go to my coach if I needed something on campus, where the normal student body or the normal Black student probably didn't feel confident going to anyone. They didn't trust anyone. So I know my college experience was different than, a normal student body or a normal Black person on campus, just based on me being an athlete. And then also just talking about the stereotypes. I was a math education major, right? So, the stereotypes among athletes and academics, right? You're lazy, you don't do work. So again, I know I represented something bigger than myself. So I always treated, all my academics seriously, because I didn't want to, have anyone judge me based on me being an athlete. And that's why I'm not doing as well academically as opposed to my other peers. And then also for the people behind me, right? I know I'm again, I keep going back to representing more than myself. But if I do well academically, then the next athlete, that professor would be more optimistic about that athlete, taking their academics seriously and not put all athletes in one, category. And then going into my professional career, I've had so many highlights in, such a short time. And I'm forever thankful for Coach Wilson. He gave me an opportunity at a young age, when things were tough, a month and a half into my GA. He gave me the opportunity to be a full-time coach. And at the time, I wasn't expecting it, but I think how I carry myself as an undergrad, led him to believe that I had the capabilities of being in this position and being successful. And I've been able to be awarded accolades nationally, by the, NABC, Civil Waves Media, MCA. And, when we've been able to win championships, right? That's a picture of our, 2018 Elite Eight team. So again, we've been able to have a lot of success. And, going into my professional career, and again, I talk about the life of an athlete, right? I felt socially accepted because I was an athlete, and because basketball is so diverse, I'm embraced by my coaching peers, right? They're not, it's not unusual to see a Black coach in college basketball. So I'm embraced by them. I don't feel like an outsider in college basketball, given our success and, the awards that I've been able to achieve, my coaching peers have been able to accept me. And then also talking about my relationships with ESU colleagues in administration. Again, I was here as a student athlete, and now as a colleague, they all treat me with respect, no matter they think I'm a lot younger than they are. Just going into admins, I had a great relationship with President Welsh. Dr. Gray's been great to me. People down on campus in Reedman Hall. I've just had great relationships, and it gives me a lot of confidence that, the world is a lot better than I thought it was growing up, right? That there are great people out there that won't discriminate against you. And my relationship and those highlights and those things are what really highlights, to this point in my career. And then I'll talk about my fears, and that's moving outside of East Stroudsburg University. And I have aspirations to become a head coach, and Coach Wilson is, helping me develop the skills to be able to do that. But I know I had the relationships here at ESU, but I know every place is not like ESU. So will someone else who don't know me, will they discriminate against me? I'm not sure about that, but I do have those fears, right? And I put down name, image, and likeness, because my name is Muhamadou Kaba, right? You see that in an application, I'm different. I don't have your typical American name. My name is an Islamic name, right? So does someone look at that and already have a bias against me? And those are some of the fears that I have as I try to move on in my professional career. Again, those fears are not among the ESU community, because I have, great relationships here. And I feel confident that, if I were to, down the line, Coach Will, if you're watching, I'm not throwing any shade, but if I was down the line in line to, hopefully become a head coach at East Stroudsburg, that the community here would support me. But I'm not sure if that's going to be the case anywhere else because of the people who don't know me, right? And those are the fears that I have, going on to my professional career. But I do have hope. I think the world is changing, especially in this country. I think there's more people who are being supportive. but I do have hope for better days, and that, by the time that I continue to apply and try to prepare myself to be a head coach, that those fears that I have, won't be there any longer. And just talking about where we are now, I think accountability, you see a lot more people becoming more accountable, a lot more businesses, athletic departments holding people accountable for their words and their actions, for their hate speech, for their, misogynistic words or anything like that. And I think that's a great thing. Everything starts with accountability. And when you hold so many people accountable, now you think twice about that. Now you learn to be, to be inclusive, right? Now you learn all of those things that before, when you're not held accountable, you feel free to do whatever you want without any consequence. So I think that's a beautiful thing. And that's what I see happening now. Action. And it kind of goes back into the accountability where, whether it's people being suspended or reprimanded, or, they have to come out and they have to apologize, and kind of own what they did. And I think part of accountability is that action. And you're starting to see that a lot more. People aren't accepting, just hate speech and saying it's okay. And that's the beauty and, the progressiveness of this country, and people, supporting, minorities. And that's the last part of it is support, right? Now you see more people from the majority supporting us, right? If something happens to a Black man, you have other people of different races and different genders coming in and supporting it, right? And it makes you feel good. And now, again, that allows for other people to be accountable and other people to, be accountable for their actions in general. Now moving forward, right? So we're talking about how do we continue to get better? And it starts at leadership. Everything starts at the top. And what I mean by that is, if you have a diverse environment, right? How is your leader embracing that, right? How is your leader continuing to hold people accountable who are racist or who don't want to embrace diversity or who don't want to be inclusive in that environment, right? The leader is always the person who sets the tone for the entire program, for the athletic department, for a university, for a business. So everything starts at the top. And I think that's really important. So we need to continue to hold these leaders accountable, and they'll be able to do the same, in line with everyone else that they're leading in their population. Intentional about diversity at leadership positions. I think that we have to reflect the population. For businesses, for college campuses, for programs, we can't shout out, hey, we're diverse, but then we don't reflect that in our leadership, right? When decisions are made, is there a voice in that room that can, represent those minorities that are on your campus, that is in your business, right? So I think we can be intentional about that. There's nothing wrong with searching for that. Hey, we want to try to diversify our leadership, because diversity empowers us all. Diversity challenges us all. And I think being able to be diverse in leadership allows us to continue to be inclusive and continue to move forward. And then last but not least is continuing to fight. I think we do have ways to go. We're not moving as fast as we probably would like to, but we need to continue to fight, right? I know people think, hey, this happened, so you should be happy. No, right? People deserve more. So we need to continue to fight and continue to want more. Just like my parents wanted more coming from Africa to this country and they achieved that. Just like I wanted more coming from East Orange to East Stroudsburg University and getting a master's degree ultimately, right? People want more, and we should continue to fight for that. And how can you help, right? I think everyone needs to be open-minded and have a perspective. Just like I talked about my experience at East Stroudsburg University, I know mine wasn't the same as every Black student at ESU. I know it couldn't be, right? I know I had certain privileges, so I have to be open-minded by that and not say, hey, East Stroudsburg's not racist. I didn't see that, right? That's unfair for me to say. So if everyone can have that open mind and that perspective of someone else's experience being different than theirs, I think we can all move forward. We can all have conversation. And Dr. Gray opened, the speaker series talking about conversation, right? And having dialogue, and that's important. But we need to approach that dialogue and those conversations with an open mind and perspective. We need to continue to take action, right? Again, we talk about accountability. Can we hold people accountable, right? Can we expose those people and bring light to their hate so that we can say that this is not acceptable. This is not what we stand for. And if we continue to do that, again, I think we can continue to move as a country going forward. And then last but not least is being supportive and inclusive. Growing up, I felt like an outsider. My siblings felt like an outsider. Our parents told us we were outsiders, and, they tried to protect us and when we had friends, they were unsure how to feel about that because they didn't want us to get hurt. So if you see someone who may be different, right, who is a minority or, who is distancing themselves, right, be supportive of them, right? Include them into some things because sometimes it's uncomfortable for you to come to someone and say, hey, I would like to be involved in something. Sometimes it may take the person who is a part of the majority to bring you in. So continuing to be supportive, continuing to be inclusive, I think all of those things will help us continue to move forward and continue to drive out hate. But I do have great hopes that, things will continue to improve. Things have improved, especially in the last 12 months, in my opinion. But I hope you guys took something away from my experiences, how I felt growing up, and what I think we can continue to do to change.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Coach Kaba. Really appreciate that. And I just want to remind people again, please send in questions or comments about via the chat at the bottom of your screen, and Noah will take a look at those and moderate those. Coach Kaba, I want to get kind of the ball rolling while people are thinking maybe about questions, and again, make a comment. It doesn't have to be a question. If you want to just make a statement about something that was said, and you and Coach Kaba can maybe go back and forth with a couple of responses, and it'll be a conversation that way. So, but thank you so much. That was an amazing presentation. I had a couple questions about the slide where you had the three groups: the immigrant male, the Muslim male, and the Black male. And I found that really interesting. And under each of those three, I noticed you had media portrayal as a bullet under each one. And I really caught that. I think that I get that. I know what you're saying there. It makes sense. On the positive side, can the media help? Whether it's, can the media debunk false narratives and unfair stereotypes and all of those things? Can we as a culture, as a society, utilize the media to speed change and to foster change in the right direction rather than maybe the wrong direction?
Yes, absolutely. The media is a business, right? So what sells papers, what gets more clicks, and that's the controversy, right? The controversial things are what sells. And that's why I think that you see a lot more negative things out there. But of course, the media has such a huge impact on how we think today, right? Social media. And that's why I think some more of the change is starting to happen, because now you have social media and now you have so many more people with a voice. And now when they speak out and they support you, now people know that, the target is on their back, right? Hey, if I spew this hate speech, I'm going to have a bunch of people right after me, right? And that's where it leads people to be more accountable. But the media definitely has a huge impact on trying to change the narrative for sure.
Great. And then just one more question. I want to, that slide obviously struck me really well. With those three categories that you listed, immigrant, Muslim, and Black, you a little bit later in your presentation talked about representation. Do you or have you felt pressure to represent those groups, or you're part of those groups, like your parents were immigrants and yourself as a Muslim or yourself as a Black male? Is there pressure that you feel, and if so, is one more than the other? Or just talk about, because you used the word representation, and I just wondered, going back to the slide, do you feel pressure with regard to representing any one, two, or three of those groups to excel, to do any sort of pressure? I guess I'll let you define it.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's pressure, to be honest. I know the majority of the people who are immigrants, the majority of people who are Muslim, and the majority of Black men are just like me. So I know that when I'm in those situations, I'm a representation of all of us. So, I don't think that I'm being out of character when I'm trying to, be professional or anything like that. I think that's just within me. So I wouldn't say that there is any pressure. But I do know that I'm representing more than myself, and how I can make life for the next person behind me a lot easier.
Good. Okay, thank you. No, I think you might have a couple to tee up there, right?
I do. We're getting some good questions in. Thank you, everybody, for starting to send some in. Coach Kaba, one question coming across is, as you move into potentially, a head coaching position, either here or at anywhere else, what will be your legacy here at ESU, or what do you want your legacy to be here at ESU as you move on?
Yeah, I want my legacy to just be, someone who was kind to everyone, someone who was helpful, and someone who just helped continue to elevate the program. So within my role as a men's basketball coach, I wear many hats within the office, but my main job is helping our student athletes graduate and move on. So when our program does well, I do well. So that's really my main goal. But, I do want to help be someone that, let that mark on everyone, that I was kind to you, that I was helpful to you. And then ultimately, as long as our program continues to excel, that's also the success of myself as well.
That's great. I've got a lot of comments about how great your presentation was and how concise and really made some great points for everybody. And I think everybody's very appreciative of that. One question was, what role do you kind of see educators or coaches at either the junior high or high school levels playing in order to help address issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion going forward as high school students kind of move into the college ranks?
Right. I think coaches can help all of their student athletes, to be honest, just be able to see the bigger picture, right? Again, in my high school, there aren't a lot of people that go to college, right? But you as a coach, you have an impact, and you can, push your, student athletes to be able to go to college or look at the bigger picture or push themselves past, high school. And I think that's really the main thing. And for me, I was a first generation college student. So I wasn't sure about how to move around with college and how to, apply and SAT setup and all of those things. So there are going to be more people like me. So the coach, has a responsibility to help those people who don't have parents who went to college, right? So I think we have to, understand that everyone, and that's what comes into equity, right? I think everyone has different resources. Everyone has, different people that they can lean on. But as a coach, I think you can help those people that, need a little bit more help. And a lot of times those are those first generation college students or those minorities who don't have the same support at home.
So that kind of leads us into one of the other questions we've got in here. So your home life growing up, obviously first generation, you just said, but what was it like kind of celebrating different holidays from most other people, in the area you grew up, or East Orange or the surrounding areas, obviously being Muslim and not celebrating the same as most?
Yeah, that was different. So, in Islam, we really only celebrate two holidays. They're both called Eid, just different times of the year. So it was a little different. You're an outsider during Christmas. Like, you would love to have some gifts because all your friends do, right? You go to school, they have new stuff on. And to be honest, my dad did a great job of trying to help us fit in, right? So, if something helped us kind of fit in socially, he searched to do that, right? So, coming out of winter break, he would just buy us something. So when we went to school, we didn't feel like an outsider. So, but growing up, it was a little bit different because we don't celebrate the same holidays. But, all in all, again, I was appreciative of, everything that I've had growing up.
That's a great answer. And a couple more questions. Wow, great questions coming in.
We've got some really good questions. Oh, man.
What advice would you give to the younger generation that is more close-minded or defensive about having conversations about diversity rather than just having arguments or protests against it?
Yeah, I think we all know at this point, we know someone who is supporting the movement, right? So I think if there's someone that you feel comfortable with, you should go and talk to them, because to be honest, you can be a lot more straightforward and they can be a lot more straightforward with their feedback to you. I know a lot of times for me, when I don't understand something on another side, like I may call my sister who's an undergraduate at Georgetown, and I may talk to her, and I'm really straightforward about what I think. And then I hear her perspective, and she tells me if my feelings are right or if my feelings are wrong. But I trust that she's she knows that I'm coming from a good place. So I think for all those people who are closed-minded, who want to continue to move forward, find that person that you know is supportive of the movement and have that dialogue with them. Because I think you can be straightforward and they know that you're hopefully coming from a good place, and they can also be straightforward with you in their response back.
Great. That's definitely great advice. We've actually got a couple questions about, especially ESU. And when you talk about needing accountability on campus or campuses specifically, is there anything specific that you'd like to see changed here or in other campuses to help with that?
Yeah, I talked about my privilege as an athlete, having some resources like a coach. If there's a possibility, I'm not sure what the dynamics of college, just college in general is going to change, but can we give some support to those minorities, right? I know we have minority communities, but can they have an additional resource in terms of someone that they can go and talk to that can help them navigate through campus, or someone that, again, I could have went to Coach Wilson or Coach Potts, like, hey, I'm having trouble in the class, and they can make a call to the tutoring center and help me be able to get help, right? And, a lot of times those minorities on campus, they don't have anyone that they can go to like that, right? Someone that they feel like, can help them continue to move forward on campus. So if there's an ability to do that, whether it's, another, it's kind of like a guidance counselor basically, but another advisor that is really, helping them navigate their way through campus, I think that is something that would be very beneficial.
Is that something that you're hearing from students or student athletes on campus? I know you have a wide range of people that you come in contact with. Is that stuff that you're hearing from students currently as well?
No, I wouldn't say I've heard that from students. I just know what I've been, fortunate to have, available to me. And, when you kind of look at it on the flip side, other people don't have that. So I'm just kind of looking at it where if I was in their shoes and I didn't have Coach Wilson or Coach Potts to go to, what would I do? And there are people in that scenario, but I haven't heard that from anyone else. And they may not understand that I had that privilege, right? Again, you just talk about perspective. They may just think that it's just hard for them, as a Black man on campus, and not understanding that, I had that privilege where it makes it a little bit easier for me.
So you've talked a bunch about, being an athlete here and how that's, afforded you some different opportunities. What is it that our athletes can do, or athletes in general can do, to include people outside athletics and try to help with, to educate ourselves even further as others? This is coming from a student athlete, but educating other student athletes on diversity and inclusion, and how you might be able to help them with that, or reach out to other students on campus.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, we can, combine some athletic teams with some of the clubs on campus, some of the programs that way. I think that's the best way of trying to, mingle between two programs in a way. So I think that's a start. Outside of that, that's a really good question, because you're trying to, have the athletes really, be more involved on campus. But, community service obviously is something, but maybe community service within the ESU campus is probably something that makes them more visible, get around different people, learn more people. But I think trying to get those athletes and bring them in with some of these club teams on campus, or, just clubs in general, will help just diversify, what their friend groups are at ESU.
So I guess broadening that diversification question then, and broadening it to groups, not just our Black student athletes, but let's say our LGBTQ community, or other student athletes or community members that may feel that they are in the minority. How do you find a way to create a supportive and safe environment for those other minority groups, especially within athletics or otherwise?
Yeah, I think we have to continue to create those inclusive environments. So whether it's the LGBTQ, I know there's an organization on campus for that, whether it's the Black Student Union, being able to bring them all together and be amongst each other. I think a lot of the problem is that people just don't know, right? So they just assume, or again, they just go from what they see on the media. But when you actually have an interaction with someone who's part of the LGBTQ, environment, or from the Black Student Union, now you can take your own perspective from that, because now you had a real interaction. But I think a lot of times where you don't have that experience, you've never been around those kind of people in general, people have assumptions, people make assumptions, and then those assumptions are led by the media. And that's why I highlighted media portrayal, because that's really what, generates all of our thoughts and all of our stereotypes, to be honest.
Another question that we have coming up is, what your upbringing, you talked a lot about in the beginning, and what have you learned about yourself through your life experiences that kind of have, brought you to where you are today, and, was able to guide your talk and stuff like that?
Yeah, that support is everything. I was supported by my family. My mom, my dad did a great job of just always being there for me, teaching me the life lessons. And when things got tough, just always pushing me through. And then when I got to college and I got to adulthood, I've always had support, whether it was from my friends, whether it's from coaches, and, support is everything. And even from other people who didn't know me and they supported me, that was great for me. To be honest, I mean, I had a professor who told me that I was one of the first, well, I think I was the first Black male math educator that came through his program. And he had pride in telling me that, and wanting to see me get through. And just that little bit of support and him saying those words, made me proud, made me happy that I was going to be someone who could, inspire other Black men to become math teachers in general. So just support is really something that I learned that, if you give anyone a little bit of support, it really helps take them a long way.
And piggybacking on that question, what made you want to become an educator? What was that driving force? In this area, it's a very diverse community, but yet the teaching population isn't very diverse.
Right.
How do we attract more minority candidates to these positions, as you talked about earlier, whether it's coaching, whether it's educating, et cetera, especially in our region?
Yeah, I mean, my dad was an educator. Again, I wanted to help people through the game of basketball. I think the power of, being an athlete is tremendous. So I wanted to coach. And at the time, I didn't know coaching basketball could be a profession. And how can I coach and be able to make an impact? I wanted to be an educator. And that was something that I thought kind of went hand in hand. So that was my passion for why I wanted to become an educator. And how do we continue to recruit other minority candidates? I think, educating them on the benefits of being an educator, right? Why you want to be an educator. And, I think a lot of people just don't know, and being able to educate everyone in general on what it is to become an educator, the benefits of that, and how you're helping someone, I think can help recruit a little bit more, people into the profession.
So what do you think, here at ESU, 2 or 3 things that we can address at ESU or in our intercollegiate athletic department to continue to foster an inclusive environment as staff and administrators, or faculty here at the university?
So you said 2 or 3 things to help foster an inclusive environment?
Yeah, not just in our student athlete and population, but in our faculty, staff, administrators, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing is, again, with the minority groups on campus, maybe being intentional about reaching out to them, right? Again, I talked about, being an outsider, it felt good when someone else, brought you in, right? Because sometimes you're uncomfortable going out to ask. So, whether it's at a sporting event, whether it's, having the step team be a part of the, Midnight Madness, whether it's, inviting, a representative from a different club on campus to speak to a team, just something where we're just being intentional about reaching out to those minority groups and, making them feel a part of the campus. I know I talked about having some form of support for some of the Black or minority, students on campus where, they have a resource like I have a coach. Again, I don't know the capabilities of that completely, but being able to have someone like that to go to, and they can help you navigate your way through campus. So I think there will be the two things, right? You want to be intentional about reaching out to those, minority groups and minority clubs and organizations on campus, and then also being able to, I forgot the second part that I just said too. Yeah, so we can just go to the next question.
Don't worry, Coach Kaba, you're doing a great job, and obviously a great role model for our student athletes here, as well as our campus community. As a former student athlete at ESU, and this is for other alumni as well, how can they help continue to be an advocate for minorities living, in the community or in the ESU community when they may not, live here or be involved as much anymore?
Yeah, I think you can do that by reaching out to whoever those leaders are in those, minority communities, right? So again, we have I'm not familiar with all of the clubs and the organizations on campus, so I apologize for that. But if you feel like you can support or help another organization on campus, reach out to them, right? You can reach out to that leader and be able to help them, right? So since you went through the university, be able to help them, with ideas or fundraisers, or being able to reach out to other people on campus. Alumni are powerful, right? The university always reaches out to alumni. They're trying to get contributions from alumni. So when an alumni speaks, typically the university will listen. So if they want to be able to make that impact, I think reaching out to those groups and being, in a way, a liaison to those groups and being able to, communicate back to campus about some of their concerns or some things that, they need for support.
So how about a fun fact question then?
All right, fun fact. All right, let's see.
Fun fact question. What movie would you say most influenced you to be a coach and to want to be an educator?
What movie most influenced me to be a coach or an influencer?
Or maybe the way you coach, or how it might have been impactful, a movie that you might have seen.
Right. I don't know if I have a movie, to be honest, that inspired me to at least coach or teach or anything like that, to be honest.
Not the movie Hoosiers? I mean, for those that, know that movie from long ago?
Nah, not Hoosiers, to be honest. Yeah, so I wouldn't say, I'm sorry, I kind of failed the fun fact part of it, but I don't know if I had a movie that inspired me in that way, to be honest. So sorry about that for whoever asked.
How about what the transition was like for you from high school to college, then to a collegiate athlete, and then to an assistant coach? And obviously you've led camps and other stuff, so you've been a head coach in those realms, but that kind of transition and your kind of learning process along the way.
Yeah, so transitioning from high school to college, it wasn't that difficult, to be honest. I was a part of some of the honors courses at East Orange Campus High School, so I was, academically prepared. So that wasn't really a transition. I would just say being away from home and being, part of just being more independent for myself was just really the biggest challenge. But it wasn't that much of a challenge. And then going from being a collegiate athlete to an assistant coach was pretty easy, to be honest. I was I was named the captain when I was a player, and that allowed me to really, kind of take on a coaching role as a player. So when I became a coach, it was really natural for me. And when I became a coach, also, I had a few players that I played with, and they were now being coached by me. And those were the guys who were easiest to coach because, they saw me as a captain, they knew what I stood for. So the transition just from high school to college, and then going from college to being, an assistant coach, wasn't overly challenging.
We got a couple more questions coming in, so keep those questions coming. They've been great. We've got a couple of math questions, interestingly enough, which is you've kind of beat the stereotype of math people being bad at sports, because obviously you were quite successful here. How do you find ways to use your math or education experiences in coaching? And what would you say your hardest math class was when you were either here or growing up?
So in terms of using my my educator background, I use that every day because I know how you teach something, how you explain something, is really how someone, is going to grasp it and be able to use it. Right. So I use that daily, and I try to, become an educator, sometimes too much of an educator at times during a practice or a film session. But I think that's actually helped me, be able to teach and be able to coach on the floor. And my most difficult math class has to be modern geometry. It's probably modern geometry 1, and then calc 2 at the time was brutal. So I would say those two. Oh, abstract algebra 2. So let's go back. Abstract algebra is 1, modern geometry is 2.
I'm glad I didn't have to pass any of those classes. Um, two questions kind of can be combined here a little bit with how do you feel that you can kind of bridge the gap with different groups on campus during this time of COVID when most people aren't here? That's really, I guess, the general question. How can you bridge that gap?
You said bridge the gap between?
Like between different groups on campus when we're not together or don't have the ability to be together right now during COVID.
Right. Yeah, being able to bridge that gap now without being together, I think is tough. I kind of go back to continuing to be intentional. If that's something that, if we want to be inclusive, right, we should reach out to those groups that we want to feel a part of, whatever we're doing. So I think that's just, the most important thing, because a lot of times people aren't going to just reach out because they don't know how they're going to be, received. So being intentional, I think, is just always the main thing. And right now at this time, I mean, we can do something with Zoom, but hopefully once we get back to things, back to normal in the fall, we can do more things, in person.
So what would you say I guess, looking at the fall then, what are you most excited about in the ESU community about the fall? Hopefully we're back and normal, as you say.
Man, I can't wait to get back and play. I feel for our guys and all the athletes who haven't been able to play for over a year. And, it's tough. Even for a coach, it's tough to just, be doing the same thing over and over again. So I'm most excited to just get out there and get back to normal, Pat Kohler, having people support, both programs, men's and women's, and, be able to just have fun again. And that's what I'm most excited for in the fall.
Another question, what kind of specific dream school or division that you would want to coach in down the line? What do you think your best fit is? We talk about Division II is a great fit because of the balance of student athletes and academics and being a student athlete. What do you think your best fit would be?
Right. I wouldn't say I have a dream school, to be honest. I think my main thing and my main goal is always to help those who, are like me, whether they come from at-risk areas, urban areas, and being able to help them, change their lives and get a degree and want more, right? So I think that's the main thing. So if I decide to, become a head coach anywhere, it has to be a place that I feel is supportive and, my goal to do that, right? Being able to provide a affordable education and also allow them to get a degree. So, I mean, dream school division, if I coach at the highest level possible, that would be great. But ultimately my goal is to help, those people who are just like me be able to graduate and get an affordable education.
We had one comment from a very influential person in our midst here, but that math was his undergrad major, one of his undergrad majors in college, and analytical skills are definitely one of the most useful things possible. But I'll ask, we're about to, wrap up here. We got one or two more questions, and I'll let Dr. Gray kind of wrap it up for us all. How do you see yourself? You seem very positive about everything that you bring to the table. You've given great answers and great conversation about everything that we can do positively about this, diversity and inclusion topic. What do you see yourself helping those people that seem to handle it in a more negative fashion? And how do you see helping bridge that gap between your positive way of thinking about it and trying to increase more awareness as those who look at it in a more negative light?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of go back to perspective. My experiences are different, and I've been able to, fight through some stereotypes and, being a part of minority groups and, being as successful as I am right now, and hopefully more to go. And for someone else who, had it rough and had it tougher, and, it was probably hard for them to feel optimistic about it. So, being able to help them find success, I think will help anyone be optimistic. So I think that's the main thing, is trying to help them see that and, achieve that. And without that, it's kind of hard for you to convince someone to be optimistic. So, so once you feel and see success, then you can be optimistic. So I think it will be my job to try to help them, achieve some form of success for them to become optimistic, or as optimistic as I am.
Well, Dr. Gray, I think that's all the questions we got for this evening. If you want to close it up for us.
Thanks, Noah. Coach Kaba, thank you very, very much for sharing your thoughts with us tonight on this very, very important topic. We sincerely appreciate you and all you do. We really, really thank you for your time tonight, and certainly everything you contribute at ESU. Thank you for answering those questions and the comments we received from tonight's webinar viewers. Noah, thanks for moderating. Dr. Greenwald, thanks for that great introduction and for your participation tonight. Thanks for being part of tonight's program, both of you. And finally, thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight to be part of this very first ESU Athletics Speaker Series, the first of 12 great speakers. We hope to see you all again next month. We plan to announce the speaker and the date for April very shortly. Again, thank you so much, and good night.